entire money-structured and materialistic-oriented society is a false society. Our society will go down in history as the lowest development in man. We have the brains, the know-how, the technology, and the feasibility to build an entirely new civilization.
It was living through the 1929 Great Depression that helped shape my social conscience. During this time, I realized the earth was still the same place. Manufacturing plants were still intact, and resources were still there, but people didn't have the money to buy the products. I felt the rules of the game we play by were obsolete and insufficient. Misery, suffering, and war provided the incentive for my life's work. I was also motivated by the seeming incompetence of governments, the academic world, and the lack of solutions offered by scientists. I realized instead of working with individuals, a more effective method would be to redesign the culture. This began a lifelong quest to finding solutions to the many problems that we have today.
This presentation is a feasible plan for social change that works toward a peaceful and sustainable global civilization where human beings, technology, and nature coexist. It outlines an alternative to strive for, where human rights are not only paper proclamations, but a way of life. It is called the Venus Project. Its founder, Jacques Fresco, calls for a straightforward redesign of the culture in which war, poverty, hunger, debt, and unnecessary human suffering are viewed not only as avoidable, but totally unacceptable. It is becoming increasingly obvious that anything less will simply result in a continuation of the same problems we face today. The Venus Project's Research Center, constructed by Fresco and Roxanne Meadows, is located in Venus, Florida. It addresses many of the root causes of our difficulties. But what are the real origins of our problems? At present, we are left with very few alternatives, since we're on a collision course of our own making. Answers from yesterday are no longer relevant. Considering the damage already done to the environment, we are rapidly approaching a point of no return, where nature will dictate the course. Either we continue as we have, with outmoded social customs and habits of thought, thereby threatening our future, or we apply a more appropriate set of values, relevant to a sustainable society, with more opportunity and freedoms.
Americans have been conditioned in their kind of society to get a different kind of car next year, to buy a new television set or a tape recorder. We are radical as hell, but our political and social institutions have not changed. And this is where we are stagnating, because we always equate any new idea with communism or regimentation, because we've been brought up to fear that which is new.
None of the world's economic systems, socialism, communism, fascism, or the free enterprise system have eliminated the problems of elitism, nationalism, racism, and most of all, scarcity. These are all based primarily on economic disparity. When money is used to regulate and distribute resources for profit, and people and nations are out for themselves, they will seek advantage at any cost. They do this by maintaining a competitive edge, or through military intervention. War represents the supreme failure of nations to resolve their differences. From a strictly pragmatic standpoint, it is the most inefficient waste of lives and resources ever conceived.
Most wars are for the control of resources and maintaining your position of differential advantage. They're not based on the dignity of man. They're not based on elevating human beings. It might elevate the human beings in the country that's the victor. It might do that. But as far as the rest of the world goes, the price is enormous.
This crude and violent attempt to resolve international differences takes on even more ominous overtones with the advent of computerized nuclear delivery systems and deadly biological and chemical weapons. Yet it is a windfall money-making opportunity for those who profit by the military-industrial complex. If the profit were taken out of wars, do you really believe we would have them?
If they draft you into the army to serve this country, you put up your life for this country, they should draft all the war industries. Every cannon maker, machine gun maker, automobiles, jeeps, warships, all drafted, so that on the same basis of pay as the army. Then it's real. But if you make millions selling warships, machine guns to the army, then it's corrupt. I would, if I had my way, if we had millions of men in the army, I'd send them to school to become problem solvers, how to get along with other nations. That's what we have to do, not kill. When soldiers are just killing machines, they're trained to kill. I would train them to be able to go to Mexico and bridge the difference, and go to the Arab world, see if they can bridge the difference. So bring them all together, all the nations.
War is not the only form of violence imposed upon people. There is also hunger, poverty, homelessness, and unemployment. The acceptance of these conditions as expressive of human nature is a myth used to keep things as they are.
Genetics has nothing to do with greed, business, race prejudice. All of the operant systems in any society are part of your education, the books you read, the role models you follow, and the people you admire. The genes have nothing to do except with the color of your eyes, the shape of your nose, perhaps inherited features. The genes do not control values. And even if you're born with a much better brain than another person, meaning better receptors, the quality of the tissue is better, I would say that if you have a better brain and you live in a fascist country, you become a fascist faster. The brain has no mechanism of discrimination. The brain can't tell you what is relevant or less relevant, except experience.
We are not born with greed, envy, hatred, or bigotry. Our behavior and values are reflective of the culture we are exposed to.
If you were raised by the headhunters of the Amazon, you'd be a headhunter. And if I said to you, doesn't it bother you to have 5 shrunken heads? You say, yes, my brother has 20. So, is he nuts? No, that's normal to his culture.
social and environmental problems will remain insurmountable as long as few nations control most of the Earth's resources, and the bottom line is profit over the well-being of people. Putting profit first results in unnecessary suffering and aberrant behavior prevalent today. Many people feel that we need the rule of law to eliminate our problems. We have many laws, thousands upon thousands of them, but they are constantly being broken. Paper proclamations and treaties do not alter the facts of scarcity, deprivation, and insecurity.
You can predict the shape of the future and the values if you know the trends of events and the ocean pollution, the scarcity of arable land. If you watch that degrading system grow, I can predict the riots and killing and assassination. In other words, human behavior is really generated by the surrounding environment. If there's a scarcity, say, of water, it is prized, and its price is high. Let's discuss scarcity as a system. Suppose it rained gold for about 3 days, gold dust. People would go out and shovel it in, fill the cellars, the attic, every drawer in that. They throw out their clothing. If the rain kept up for a year, so the gold was all over the place, people would sweep it out of the house, take their rings off, throw them away, and so human behavior undergoes change to that condition. There's only a policeman in front of something that people have need for and don't have access to. So you put a guard there. But if lemon trees or orange trees and apple trees grew all over the place, you couldn't sell it. If you landed on an island that was so abundant with resources, you had 10 people, there were 1,000 fish for every person if you wanted it. There were 10 times the amount of breadfruit and bananas, money would not come into existence. Private property would not come into existence. If the island was big enough, there was 10 people, there were 8,000 acres. No one would give a damn about staking out this particular area. There are patterns of behavior that promote survival. There are social conditions that change our values and outlook. No one can write a constitution of required behavior without consulting the environment. So we'd better take care of the environment, we'd better take care of one another, and we'd better educate people to the highest possible levels of our ability in order to have a society.
Even a peace treaty cannot prevent another war if the underlying causes are not dealt with. Maybe what is needed are ethical people in government who will work towards everyone's well-being. But even if the most ethical people were elected to high positions and we ran out of resources, there would still be lying, cheating, stealing, and corruption. It's not ethical people that are needed, but rather a way of intelligently managing the Earth's resources for everyone's well-being. Let's examine our social arrangements further. To maintain our economy, products must continuously be sold. To assure this, they are deliberately designed to wear out and break down. Maybe you've noticed this usually happens right after the warranty expires. This corrupt practice is referred to as planned obsolescence, which is the conscious withdrawal of efficiency. Innovators go through the finest schools and then are required to design things that wear out and break down right on schedule. This results in a tremendous waste of resources and energy. We are plundering the planet for profits. If you think about it, it isn't a job people want, but access to what their paycheck will bring. Money does not represent anything real, and there's no gold, silver, or resource to back it up. You can't eat money or build a house of it. It's not even related to our real capacity to produce goods and services on this planet. The monetary system has been handed down from centuries ago, and we continue to use it without questions.
This system will keep installing more and more automation, cutting down on the purchasing power of the majority of people. There will come a time, it's called the Gaussian curve, where employment is that, production is this, and purchasing power is that. The system stops. Banks fail, nothing works anymore. We're moving in that direction very rapidly.
We have finally gotten to a place in 2011 where it's becoming obvious that the machine has beaten the man.
We're incredibly productive with far fewer people.
We are more productive. We are more productive as an economy than ever before.
An iPad app can do more than
workers.
4 people.
Just that there are fewer jobs. The jobs that do exist now can have lower wages because of obvious reasons. A lot of people looking for a small number of jobs. The wages go down. That has huge impacts on the middle class and ripples out from there.
We're moving towards social collapse. I think this is going to happen all over the world, not just here. And it doesn't require the overthrow of the government. It just requires that you let it alone. It'll overthrow itself. If you control the media, you can calm people down. But if the majority keeps getting laid off, they don't have purchasing power, the system collapses. It doesn't work anymore. They invade. It's already happening. This country is already insoluble. They're going to have difficulty with national security, paying pension people. They've spent far beyond what they already have. Now, all they can do now is create debt, borrow more and more money from banks.
We also want to show you a rather grim sign of our times. It's not far from here in Midtown Manhattan. The national debt has grown too large for the national debt clock. It went up back in 1989 when the nation's debt was less than $3 trillion. The debt has been piling up so fast lately they had to drop the dollar sign to make room for an extra digit as the number turned over to more than $10 trillion now and counting every second. A whole new clock with 2 extra spaces will go up next year.
The federal government is not allowed to print money. It's not allowed to lend money or get in the banking business. That is a privilege for bankers only. So what the government has to do if they want to build an air force, say, of 2,000 planes a month, they have to borrow money from a private lending institution, sign the dotted line, and if the war is lost or failed, the burden falls on the public to pay off that debt.
We find ourselves and our social constructs in a transitional state, a matter of social evolution. If we want to make it through these turbulent times, we must be able to adapt to change. All things change, including our social systems. Albert Einstein stated, "We cannot solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them." Earth is still abundant with resources. Our practice of rationing resources through monetary control is no longer relevant and is actually counterproductive to our very survival. Today, we have highly advanced technologies, but our social and economic system has not kept up with our technological capabilities, which could otherwise easily create a world of abundance for all, free of servitude and debt. How can this be possible? There is not enough money to feed or house all people on this planet, let alone accomplish these more ambitious ends. But Earth has more than enough resources to meet the needs of all people, but only if managed intelligently. Jacques Fresco envisions a solution that he calls a resource-based economy. It is a socio-economic system in which all goods and services are available to everyone, without the use of money, barter, credit, debt, or servitude of any kind. It is unlike any social system that has gone before. Fresco arrived at this direction through 75 years of study and experimental research.
A resource-based economy operates on the basis of available resources and makes those resources available to every human being on earth, free of charge, without a price tag. So we have today more than enough resources to build a far more advanced society. I'm not talking about limited handouts so that people just get by. I'm talking about a very advanced civilization. We have the resources, we have the technology, all we have to do is apply it.
One of the main aspects of the Venus Project is to eliminate scarcity. This is where the technology comes into play. Because if we set up a resource-based economy and some things are scarce, it won't work. If you set up a resource-based economy in a society that has no resources, it won't work. So today with our technology, we can make things available. We can eliminate scarcity. We can create an abundance. As long as we can create that abundance, that will eliminate greed and selfishness and a lot of crime and a lot of aberrant behavior.
A social system can be designed so that all can live fully and constructively if the powers of science and technology are directed toward human and environmental concern and overcoming the artificial scarcities of our debt-based monetary systems. All people, regardless of political philosophy, social customs, or religious differences, ultimately depend upon the same resources: clean air and water, arable land, medical care, and a relevant education.
I think if you pledge allegiance to the earth and everyone on it, that'd be the way to go for the future.
The human species is a single family, and the world is home to everyone. Neither nations nor people can coexist separately any longer.
No more separate nations. So anyone can go anywhere. Before the states joined together, they used to stake out their territory. They used to fight. They had militias. They would fight. This is our territory. Oh no, you're intruding. When all the states joined together, the government worked out the lines of the states and they agreed, and that was the end of territorial disputes. If you want the end of war, you must declare the earth common heritage.
This has nothing to do with those who want to form an elite world order with themselves and large corporations in control and the rest of the world subservient to them. On the contrary, a global resource-based economy enables all people to reach their highest potential, where they can thrive and grow in a society that works in their behalf, a society that protects and preserves the environment as well, one that understands that we are part of nature, not separate from it.
Some question what would happen to incentive if needs were met without our having to work to attain them. The question assumes humans have no desires beyond basic needs. If that were true, there would be no inventors, writers, or teachers. People work with passion on the things that interest and challenge them. Let's enable all people to have the opportunity to partake in the greatest challenge one can have, improving our world for everyone. Individuality will be emphasized rather than uniformity. This social arrangement will generate a new incentive system that values the protection of the environment and social concern, rather than the shallow, self-centered goals of wealth, property, and power.
It does not call for uniformity. It absolutely calls for diversity. The more diverse people are, the more individuality. So we emphasize individuality, creativity, innovativeness. This is the essentials of the design. It is not a group of scientists telling people what to do, how to live, where to go, what to follow.
Motivation and incentive exist when people have meaningful tasks. True growth and development occur when people are involved in creative, challenging, and constructive endeavors. However, motivation and incentive die in the daily grind of boring and repetitive jobs required to earn a paycheck.
If you hand out things to people, if you fed them and clothed them and housed them free, they're not going to work in the morning because they don't need it. They got their housing, clothing, motion pictures, and entertainment. Well, why go to work? Work is painful, it's monotonous, it's boring. In the future, if people have access to all their needs, but they don't have any challenges, this is where it goes to pot. So people constantly are challenged by new things. In our schools, we challenge them with many things that are unsolved and many unresolved problems. If you're well-fed and well-clothed, that doesn't stop your brain from working. That would mean that every millionaire does nothing and is turned off because he got all the means. That's not true. There are many millionaires that work 18 hours a day and don't have enough time. It has to do with your background and your education. The more you know about oceanography, astronomy, and all that, the more interest, the more alive you are. And if you're just given food, clothing, and shelter, now you can go to work. You don't have to worry about making a living, which your incentive would be boosted considerably. So I call that a new and innovative incentive system. It's not monetary oriented, it's problem solving oriented. And you get your kicks out of seeing the world become a better place.
How can we use our technology wisely so that there is more than enough for everyone? To achieve this, it's mandatory that the planning for it be based on the carrying capacity of the planet's resources. Our entire infrastructure must be redesigned and operated as coherent, integrated total systems. This means we must consider our entire global community as one unit that includes everyone, and plan accordingly. Only in this way can we use our technology to overcome resource shortages, provide universal abundance, and protect the environment. Therefore, a global survey is first needed to assess exactly what we have. This would inventory our physical resources, personnel, production centers, and the needs of people. This enables us to determine the amount of goods and services needed. For instance, where is the arable land to grow crops? How many people are in various locations? And what is the state of their health? This would determine where hospitals are built and how many.
If you try to do that today, ask for a global resource survey of all nations, they'd wonder, what are you trying to do that for? To find if we got enough resource to fight you in armaments and other things? They would be skeptical, hesitant to give that information. So I would say it wouldn't work in today's culture. But after the ideas are put forth and the reason for it and the advantages gained by all the nations, it would have to be specific advantages that they can understand in their terms. And if they agree, then the survey would be conducted. It's not my opinion or the opinion of anyone else would be used. It's the size of the population, the availability of resources, the carrying capacity of the earth that determines what is done and how fast things move. See, today it's done on a totally different basis. But in the future, it'll all be based on a form of dynamic equilibrium. That means operating everything at the highest potential without environmental neglect.
The key to achieving abundance and a high standard of living for all is to automate as much as possible in the shortest period of time.
But during the transition, we have to bring together the technological capabilities of people working with computers and working with technology and building and designing methods of delivering these resources and the necessary industrial plants to process the resources.
Our problems and their solutions are technical, not political. Most problems can be solved when technology and the methods of science are used to serve all people, not just a select few.
But what is it that you want? You have to ask yourself, I want to live in a world where I don't have to fear that my children will go into another war, where there'll be deprivation or problems or disease. Do you know how to build that kind of world? No, I don't. Well, how do you go about building? You call upon the various divisions of science, bring them together, and say, these are the problems we'd like to solve. A scientific government doesn't mean that scientists rule or control people. It means they have better means for building transportation systems, better means for cleaning the air. They have the best means for restoring the ocean that we know of to this day.
Computers can serve the needs of everyone when CyberNation is ultimately integrated into all aspects of this new and dynamic culture. One can think of this as an electronic nervous system, extending into all areas of the social complex. Their function would be to coordinate a balance between production and distribution, assuring there are no shortages or overruns.
In this highly technical society, decisions are based on direct environmental, human, and industrial feedback. You can think of this as electrical sensors throughout the entire environment, from cities, factories, warehouses, distribution centers, transportation networks, all over the globe, gathering data for more appropriate decisions. The decisions are based on the needs of society rather than corporate or private interests.
It is not automated technology or machines we should be wary of, but the abuse and misuse of technology by selfish interests. Remember, it is people who decide what ends the machines will serve. If technology does not liberate all people for the pursuit of higher aspirations and human achievement, then all its technological potential will be meaningless.
You always do a positive and negative study before you engage in the actual reconstruction of an environment.
It's all just talk unless there is a technical plan to organize and use resources to accomplish abundance. What follows are some of the many approaches the Venus Project provides for the entire social spectrum. Today, more than half our population lives in cities that are polluted, dangerous, and waste energy.
What we have to do is design a city as a living system, as an organism, as a university, that all of the cities of the future will be university cities that grow, that continue to exchange ideas. The city will have a built-in transportation system, so there are no accidents and no unthought out areas of technology. Medicine, botany, agriculture, the total system, one planning system.
It is actually better to build newer cities from the ground up than to restore and maintain old ones. Fresco uses a systems approach to designing new cities. They're desirable and pleasant places to live. The notion that intelligent overall planning implies mass uniformity is absurd. Cities would be uniform only to the degree that they would require far less materials, save time and energy, and be flexible enough to allow for innovative changes while preserving the local ecology.
If we design our cities to meet human needs, you don't have most of the problems that are prevalent today. In the Central Dome, you have childcare, schools, dental care, medical care. In the production and design of the cities, we work out 1/8 of the city system, and then we reproduce it instead of have architects design each building and each structure, which is a tremendous waste of energy and talent.
When working on solving the housing problem for all the world's people, construction techniques would be vastly different from those employed today. Extruded and self-erecting structures could revolutionize and speed up construction processes. These lightweight, durable apartments could be produced as continuous extrusions and then separated and positioned in place by the mega machines. The outer shells of these efficient structures serve as photovoltaic generators and heat concentrators.
You don't own anything in this society. Really, people don't want money. They want access to things when they want it. And people in a society of abundance, having access to things, will really no longer begin to store and accumulate things. We recycle it, update it, make it better. Take the same materials of an old car, weighs just as much as a new car, so there are no old cars. Old cars mean danger. If you drive a very expensive car and somebody else drives a beat-up old car, if their brakes fail, you may die. We don't want any old cars on the highway. We don't want anything that breaks down. We don't want anything that takes looking after.
In a resource-based economy, people may access whatever products they need without the burden of having to purchase, maintain, or insure their possessions. In this way, there is much more to go around for everyone, and products are always available when needed.
Anything people may need is available in these outside access domes. Sculpturing materials, musical instruments, somewhat like the public library. They can go down and access a camera or a bicycle or a wristwatch. Anything that they need is available without a price tag. That would mean we must achieve a level of production that's so high that scarcity no longer exists. That will prevent almost all crime.
So there's no way of segmenting or making this system just or equitable. We have to make a system that assures human rights. You know, when everybody has free access to goods and services, you don't have to fight for women's rights or black rights. It's an automatic in a society that's set up that way. You don't have to make laws, don't steal. It would bypass that behavior.
Surrounding the central dome, you have the research centers. Centers that do work that's relevant to the sustainability of the entire community. As we move away from the research centers, we come to the recreational area, which has tennis courts and all of the games that people require. As we move away from that, we come to the residential district. There are streams, waterfalls, lakes throughout the area.
We could provide a wide range of unique homes and apartments that can be relatively maintenance-free, fireproof, and virtually impervious to adverse weather conditions.
As we move to the next sector, we come to apartments. The reason some people want to live in apartments is because you have drama groups, you have gymnasiums, medical care, dental care, everything is built in to the central towers. I feel that in the future, people will move away from individual houses and live in larger complexes. As we move outward, we come to the indoor agriculture or hydroponic farms. Then there's also outdoor agriculture.
The city would use the best of clean technology in harmony with nature, such as wind, solar, geothermal, heat concentrators, piezoelectric, wave, temperature differentials, ocean thermal vents, and much more. A major development for generating energy in the future could be the construction of a land bridge or tunnel across the Bering Strait. These underwater structures convert a portion of the ocean currents through turbines to generate clean sources of power. By using these sources of energy, we could power the Earth on clean energy and enable all people to enjoy a very high standard of living for thousands of years to come. There's no need for the use of polluting hydrocarbons any longer. Pollution will be a thing of the past. All transportation will be integrated into a worldwide transportation system. Transportation within cities will be by transbayers. City-to-city travel will be by monorail. Maglev trains are utilized for long-distance travel. To enhance efficiency, this high-speed maglev train is equipped with removable sections, which can be disengaged while the train is in motion. Aircraft will display a wide range of configurations. These VTOL aircraft, or vertical takeoff and landing, are used to transport passengers and freight. The priority is safety rather than saving money or dealing with the lowest bidder. This modular freighter consists of detachable sections that can be rapidly loaded or unloaded. The number of sections varies depending on the amount of freight to be delivered. When all the sections are connected, they can be propelled as a single unit. Ships can be floating manufacturing plants that produce products while en route to their destinations. They can also serve as education centers, where children and adults travel worldwide, obtaining innovative education, not through vicarious study, but through experiencing and interacting with the real-world environment. A national transportation system would include a network of waterways, canals, and irrigation systems. They could serve to minimize the threat of floods and droughts while allowing for the migration of fish, provide natural fire breaks, emergency water sources, fish farms, and recreation areas.
When we unleash science and technology directly into the social system without the restrictions of the marketplace, finances, or patents, we could achieve a very high standard of living within a very short period of time. This society would continuously improve, changing rapidly through new technologies, inventions, and ideas. It would be an emergent society rather than an established one like we have today.
Imagine living in an extraordinary oceanic city, helping to restore the ocean environment while eliminating land-based population pressures. These cities in the sea may serve as universities and research centers where students study marine sciences. They could be used for ocean farming, mariculture, and mining, while maintaining a dynamic balance in the oceanographic environment. Self-sufficient cities in the sea vary in design depending on their location and function. This undersea observation station permits people to view marine life in its natural habitat. These mariculture and sea farming systems cultivate and raise fish along with other forms of marine life to help meet the nutritional needs of the world's people. These structures would permit the free flow of water throughout. Using technology in this way would make it possible for a global society to achieve social advancement and worldwide reconstruction in the shortest time possible.
Utopia, if it's ever established, will die, will stagnate. Whereas what I'm talking about, an evolving culture or an emergent culture, I have no notions of a perfect society. I don't know what that means. I know we can do much better than what we've got. I'm no utopian. I'm not a humanist who would like to see everybody living in warmth and harmony. I know that if we don't live that way, we'll kill each other and destroy the earth.
This new lifestyle, while providing leisure and recreation, would also enhance knowledge and creativity for everyone. The measure of success would be the fulfillment of one's personal interest rather than the acquisition of wealth and self-centered goals. A resource-based economy would not only change our environment to make it clean, efficient, and enjoyable, but it would introduce a new value system appropriate to the direction and aims of the new innovative approach. With education and resources made available, there would be no limit to the human potential. Everyone will have the freedom to pursue whatever constructive field of endeavor he or she chooses, without the economic limitations that we face today.
Let's imagine for a moment we had the option to redesign human civilization from the ground up. What if, hypothetically speaking, we discovered an exact replica of the planet Earth, and the only difference between this new planet and our current one is that human evolution had not occurred. It was an open palette. No countries, no cities, no pollution, no Republicans, just a pristine, open environment. So, what would we do? Well, first we need a goal, right? And it's safe to say that goal would be to survive. And not to just survive, but to do so in an optimized, healthy, prosperous way. Most people indeed desire to live, and they would prefer to do so without suffering. Therefore, the basis of this civilization needs to be as supportive and hence sustainable for human life as possible, taking into account the material needs of all the world's people, while trying to remove anything that could hurt us in the long run. That goal of, say, maximum sustainability understood, the next question regards our method. What kind of approach do we take? Well, let's see. Last I checked, politics was the method of social operation on Earth. So what do the doctrines of the Republicans, liberals, conservatives, or socialists have to say about societal design? Not a damn thing. Okay, then what about religion? Surely the great creator had to have left some blueprint somewhere. No, nothing I can find. Okay then, so what's left? It appears something called science. Science is unique in that its methods demand not only that the ideas proposed be tested and replicated, but everything science comes up with is also inherently falsifiable. In other words, unlike religion and politics, science has no ego, and everything it suggests accepts the possibility of being proven wrong eventually. It holds on to nothing and evolves constantly. Well, that sounds natural enough to me. So then, based on the current state of scientific knowledge in the early 21st century, along with our goal of maximum sustainability for the human population, how do we begin the actual process of construction? Well, the first question to ask, what do we need to survive? The answer, of course, are planetary resources. Whether it is the water we drink, the energy we use, the raw materials we utilize to create tools and shelter, the planet hosts an inventory of resources, many of which are demanded for our survival. So, given that reality, it then becomes critical to figure out what we have and where it is. This means we need to conduct a survey. We simply locate and identify every physical resource on the planet we can, along with the amount available at each location, from the deposits of copper, to the most potent locations for wind farms to produce energy, to the natural freshwater springs, to an assessment of the amount of fish in the ocean, to the most prime arable land for food cultivation, etc. But, since we humans are going to be consuming these resources over time, we then realize that not only do we need to locate and identify, we also need to track. We need to make sure we don't run out of any of this stuff. That would be bad. And this means not only tracking our rates of use, but the rates of earthly regeneration as well, such as how long it takes for, say, a tree to grow or a spring to replenish. This is called dynamic equilibrium. In other words, if we use up trees faster than they can be grown back, we have a serious problem, for it is unsustainable. So then, how do we track this inventory, especially when we recognize that all of this stuff is scattered everywhere? We have large mineral mines in what we call Africa, energy concentrations in the Middle East, huge tidal power possibilities on the Atlantic coast of North America, the largest supply of freshwater in Brazil, etc. Well, once again, good old science has a suggestion. It's called systems theory. Systems theory recognizes that the fabric of the natural world, from human biology to the earthly biosphere to the gravitational pull of the solar system itself, is one huge synergistically connected system, fully interlinked. Just as human cells connect to form our organs, and the organs connect to form our bodies, and since our bodies cannot live without the earthly resources of food, air, and water, we are intrinsically connected to the earth, and so on. So, as nature suggests, we take all of this inventory and tracking data and create a system to manage it. A global resource management system, in fact, to account for every relevant resource on the planet. There is simply no logical alternative if our goal as a species is survival in the long run. We have to keep track as a whole. That understood, we can now consider production. How do we use all this stuff? What will our process of production be, and what do we need to consider to make sure it is as optimized as possible to maximize our sustainability? Well, the first thing that jumps right out at us is the fact that we need to constantly try and preserve. The planet's resources are essentially finite, so it is important that we be strategic. Strategic preservation is key. The second thing we recognize is that some resources are really not as good as others in their performance. In fact, some of this stuff, when put into use, has a terrible effect on the environment, which invariably hinders our own health. For example, oil and fossil fuels, no matter how you cut it, release some pretty destructive agents into the environment. Therefore, it is critical we do our best to use such things only when we really have to, if at all. Fortunately for us, we see a ton of solar, wind, tidal, wave, heat differential, and geothermal possibilities for energy production, so we can strategize objectively about what we use and where to avoid what could be called negative retroactions, or anything that results from production or use that damages the environment and hence ourselves. We will call this strategic safety to couple in with our strategic preservation. But production strategies do not stop there. We are going to need an efficiency strategy for the actual mechanics of production itself. And what we find is that there are roughly 3 specific protocols we must adhere to. 1. Every good we produce must be designed to last as long as possible. Naturally, the more things break down, the more resources we are going to need to replace them, and the more waste produced. 2. When things do break down or are no longer usable for whatever reason, it is critical that we harvest or recycle as much as we possibly can. So the production design must take this into account directly at the very earliest stages. 3. Quickly evolving technologies, such as electronics, which are subject to the fastest rates of technological obsolescence, would need to be designed to foreshadow and accommodate physical updates. The last thing we want to do is throw away an entire computer system just because it has only one broken part or is outdated. So we simply design the components to be easily updated, part by part, standardized and universally interchangeable, foreshadowed by the current trend of technological change. And when we realize that the mechanisms of strategic preservation, strategic safety, and strategic efficiency are purely technical considerations, devoid of any human opinion or bias, we simply program these strategies into a computer which can weigh and calculate all the relevant variables, allowing us to always arrive at the absolute best method for sustainable production based on current understandings. And while that might sound complex, all it is a glorified calculator. Not to mention such multivariate decision-making and monitoring systems are already used across the world today for isolated purposes. It is simply a process of scaling it out. So, now we not only have our resource management system, but also a production management system, both of which are easily computer automated to maximize efficiency, preservation, and safety. The informational reality is that the human mind, or even a group of humans, cannot track what needs to be tracked. It must be done by computers, and it can be. And this brings us to the next level, distribution. What sustainability strategies make sense here? Well, since we know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and since energy is required to power transport machines, the less transport distance, the more efficient. Producing goods in one continent and shipping them over to another only makes sense if the goods in question simply cannot be produced in the target area. Otherwise, it is nothing but wasteful. We must localize production so distribution is simple, fast, and requires the least amount of energy. We'll call this the proximity strategy, which simply means we reduce the travel of goods as much as possible, whether raw materials or finished consumer products. Of course, it might also be important to know what goods we are transporting and why, and this falls under the category of demand. And demand is simply what people need to be healthy and to have a high quality of life. The spectrum of material human needs range from core life-supporting necessities, such as food, clean water, shelter, to social and recreational goods, which allow for relaxation and personal social enjoyment, both important factors in human and social health overall. So, very simply, we take another survey. People describe their needs, demand is assessed, and production begins based on that demand. And since the level of demand of different goods will naturally fluctuate and change around different regions, we need to create a demand distribution tracking system, so to avoid overruns and shortages. Of course, this idea is old news. It is used in every major store chain today to make sure they keep up with their inventory. Only this time we are tracking on a global scale. But, wait a minute, we really can't fully understand demand if we don't account for the actual usage of the good itself. Is it logical and sustainable for every single human to, say, have one of everything made, regardless of their usage? No. That would be simply wasteful and inefficient. If a person has a need for a good, but that need is only for, say, 45 minutes a day on average, it would be much more efficient if that good was made available to them and to others when needed. Many forget that it isn't the good that they want, it is the purpose of that good. When we realize that the good itself is only as important as its utility, we see that external restriction, or what we might call today ownership, is extremely wasteful and environmentally illogical in a fundamental economic sense. So, we need to devise a strategy called strategic access. This would be the foundation of our demand distribution tracking system, which makes sure we can meet the demand of the population's needs for access of whatever they need when they need it. And as far as physically obtaining the goods, centralized and regional access centers all make sense for the most part, placed in close proximity to the population, and a person would simply come in, take the item, use it, and when finished, return it when it is no longer needed. Sort of how a library works today. In fact, these centers could not only exist in the community in the way we see local stores today, but specialized access centers would exist in specific areas where often certain goods are utilized, saving more energy with less repeat transport. And once this demand tracking system is in order, it is tied into our production management system, and of course into our resource management system, hence creating a unified, dynamically updating, global economic management machine that simply makes sure we remain sustainable, starting with securing the integrity of our finite resources, moving to make sure we only create the best, most strategic goods possible, while distributing everything in the most intelligent and efficient way. And the unique result of this preservation-based approach, which is intuitively counter to many, is that this logical, ground-up, empirical process of preservation and efficiency, which can only define true human sustainability on this planet, would likely enable something never before seen in human history. Access abundance, not just for a percentage of the global population, but the entire civilization. This economic model, as was just generalized, this responsible systems approach to total Earth resource management and processes, designed again to do nothing less than take care of humanity as a whole in the most efficient and sustainable way, could be termed a resource-based economy. The idea was defined in the 1970s by structural engineer Jacques Fresco. He understood back then that society was on a collision course with nature and itself, unsustainable on every level. And if things didn't change, we would destroy ourselves one way or another.
Are all these things you're saying, Jacques, could they be built with what we know today, or are some of these things, are you guessing based on what we know today?
No. All of these things can be built with what we know today. It would take 10 years to change the surface of the earth, to rebuild the world into a second Garden of Eden. The choice lies with you. The stupidity of a nuclear arms race, the development of weapons, trying to solve your problems politically by electing this political party or that political party, that all politics is immersed in corruption. Let me say it again. Communism, socialism, fascism, the Democrats, the liberals, we want to absorb human beings. All organizations that believe in a better life for man, there are no Negro problems or Polish problems or Jewish problems or Greek problems or women's problems. They're human problems. I'm not afraid of anybody. I don't work for anyone. No one can discharge me. I have no boss. I am afraid to live in the society we live in today. Our society cannot be maintained by this type of incompetency. It was great, the free enterprise system, about 35 years ago. That was the last of its usefulness. Now we've got to change our way of thinking or perish.
The horror movies of the future will be our society, the way it didn't work. And politics would be part of a horror movie. Lots of people today use the term cold science because they're analytical, and they don't even know what analytical means. Science means closer approximations of the way the world really works. So it's telling the truth is what it is. A scientist doesn't try to get along with people. They tell them what their findings are. They have to question all things. And if some scientist comes up with an experiment that shows certain materials have certain strength, other scientists have to be able to duplicate that experiment and come up with the same results. Even if a scientist feels that an airplane wing, due to mathematics or calculations, can hold up a given amount of weight, they still pile sandbags on it to see when it breaks. And they say, you know, my calculations are right, or they're not correct. I love that system because it's free of bias and free of thinking that math can solve all the problems. You have to put your math to test also. I think that every system that can be put to test should be put to test, and that all decisions should be based upon research.
A resource-based economy is simply the scientific method applied to social concern, an approach utterly absent in the world today. Society is a technical invention, and the most efficient methods of optimized human health, physical production, distribution, city infrastructure, and the like reside in the field of science and technology, not politics or monetary economics. It operates in the same systematic way as, say, an airplane, and there is no Republican or liberal way to build an airplane. Likewise, nature itself is the physical referent we use to prove our science, and it is a set system, emerging only from our increased understanding of it. In fact, it has no regard for what you subjectively think or believe to be true. Rather, it gives you an option. You can learn and fall in line with its natural laws and conduct yourself accordingly, invariably creating good health and sustainability, or you can go against the current to no avail. It doesn't matter how much you believe you can just stand up right now and walk on the wall next to you. The law of gravity will not allow it. If you do not eat, you will die. If you are not touched as an infant, you will die. As harsh as it may sound, nature is a dictatorship, and we can either listen to it and come in harmony with it, or suffer the inevitable adverse consequences. So, a resource-based economy is nothing more than a set of proven, life-supporting understandings where all decisions are based upon optimized human and environmental sustainability. It takes into account the empirical life ground, which every human being shares as a need, regardless, again, of their political or religious philosophy. There is no cultural relativism to this approach. It isn't a matter of opinion. Human needs are human needs, and having access to the necessities of life such as clean air, nutritious food, and clean water, along with a positively reinforcing, stable, nurturing, and non-violent environment, is demanded for our mental and physical health, our evolutionary fitness, and hence the species' survival itself.
A resource-based economy would be based upon available resources. You can't just bring a lot of people to an island or build a city of 50,000 people without having access to the necessities of life. So when I use the term a comprehensive systems approach, I'm talking about doing an inventory of the area first and determining what that area can supply, not just architectural approach, not just design approach, but design must be based on all of the requirements to enhance human life. And that's what I mean by an integrated way of thinking. Food, clothing, shelter, warmth, love, all those things are necessary. If you deprive people of any of them, you have a lesser human being, less capable of functioning.
As previously outlined, a resource-based economy's ground-up, global, systems approach to extraction, production, and distribution is based upon a set of true economic mechanisms, or strategies, which guarantee efficiency and sustainability in every area of the economy. So, continuing this train of thought regarding logical design, what is next in our equation? Where does all this materialize? Cities. The advent of the city is a defining feature of modern civilization. Its role is to enable efficient access to the necessities of life, along with increased social support and community interaction. So how would we go about designing an ideal city? What shape should we make it? Square? Trapezoid? Well, given we're going to be moving around the thing, we might as well make it as equidistant as possible for ease, hence the circle. What should the city contain? Well, naturally we need a residential area, a goods production area, a power generation area, an agricultural area. But we also need nurturing as human beings, hence culture, nature, recreation, and education. So let's include a nice open park, an entertainment events area for cultural purposes and socializing, and educational and research facilities. And since we're working with a circle, it seems rational to place these functions in belts based on the amount of land required for each goal, along with ease of access. Very good. Now, let's get down to specifics. First, we need to consider the core infrastructure, or intestines, of the city organism. These would be the water, good, waste, and energy transport channels. Just as we have water and sewage systems under our cities today, we would extend this channeling concept to integrate waste recycling and delivery itself. No more mailmen or garbage men. It is built right in. We could even use automated pneumatic tubes and similar technologies. Same goes for transport. It needs to be integrated and strategically designed to reduce or even remove the need for wasteful, independent automobiles. Electric trams, conveyors, transveyors, and maglevs, which can take you virtually anywhere in the city, even up and down, along with connecting you to other cities as well. And of course, in the event an automobile is required, it is automated by satellite for safety and integrity. In fact, this automation technology is in working order right now. Automobile accidents kill about 1.2 million people every single year, injuring about 50 million. This is absurd and doesn't have to occur. Between efficient city design and automated driverless cars, this death toll can be virtually eliminated. Agriculture. Today, through our haphazard, cost-cutting industrial methods, using pesticides, excessive fertilizers, and other means, we have successfully destroyed much of the arable land on this planet, not to mention also extensively poisoning our bodies. In fact, industrial and agricultural chemical toxins now show up in virtually every human being tested, including infants. Fortunately, there is a glaring alternative: the soilless mediums of hydroponics and aeroponics, which also reduce nutrient and water requirements by up to 75% of our current usage. Food can now be organically grown on an industrial scale in enclosed vertical farms, such as in 50-story 1-acre plots, virtually eliminating the need for pesticides and hydrocarbons in general. This is the future of industrial food cultivation, efficient, clean, and abundant. So, such advanced systems would be, in part, what comprise our agricultural belt, producing all the food required for the entire city's population, with no need to import anything from the outside, saving time, waste, and energy. And speaking of energy, the energy belt would work in a systems approach to extract electricity from our abundant renewable mediums, specifically wind, solar, geothermal, and heat differentials, and if near water potentials, tidal and wave power. To avoid intermittency and make sure a positive net energy return occurs, these mediums would operate in an integrated system, powering each other when needed, while storing excessive energy to large supercapacitors under the ground, so nothing can go to waste. And not only does the city power itself, particular structures will also power independently and generate electricity through photovoltaic paints, structural pressure transducers, the thermocouple effect, and other current but underutilized technologies. But of course, this begs the question, how does this technology and goods in general get created in the first place? This brings us to production. The industrial belt, apart from having hospitals and the like, would be the hub of factory production. Completely localized overall, it would of course obtain raw materials by way of the global resource management system just discussed, with demand being generated by the population of the city itself. As far as the mechanics of production, we need to discuss a new, powerful phenomenon which was sparked very recently in human history and is on pace to changing everything. It's called mechanization, or the automation of labor.
Well, if you look around you, you'll notice that almost everything that we use today is built automatically. Your shoes, your clothes, your home appliances, your car, and so on. They are all built by machines in an automatic way. Can we say that the society has not been influenced by these major technological advancements? Of course not. These systems really dictate new structures and new needs, and they make a lot of other things obsolete. So we've been going up in the development and use of technology in an exponential way. So definitely automation is going to continue. You cannot stop technologies that just make sense.
Labor automation through technology is at the bottom of every major social transformation in human history. From the agricultural revolution and the invention of the plow, to the industrial revolution and the invention of the powered machine, to the information age we live in now through essentially the invention of advanced electronics and computers. And with regard to advanced production methods today, mechanization is now evolving on its own, moving away from the traditional method of assembling component parts into a configuration into an advanced method of creating entire products in one single process.
Like most engineers, I'm fascinated by biology because it's so full of examples of extraordinary pieces of engineering. And absolutely, what biology is the study of things that copy themselves. Of course, that's good a definition of life as we've got. Again, as an engineer, I've always been intrigued by the idea of machines that would copy themselves. RepRap is a three-dimensional printer. That's to say, it's a printer that you plug into a computer, and instead of making two-dimensional sheets of paper with patterns on, it makes real, physical, three-dimensional objects. Now, there's nothing new about that. 3D printers have been around for about 30 years. Big thing about RepRap is that it prints most of its own parts. So if you've got one, you can make another one and give it to a friend, as well as being able to print lots of useful things.
From the simple printing of basic household goods in your home, to the printing of an entire automobile body in one swoop, advanced automated 3D printing now has the potential to transform virtually every field of production, including home construction.
Contour crafting is actually a fabrication technology, the so-called 3D printing, when you directly build a 3D object from a computer model. Using contour crafting, it will be possible to build a 2,000 square foot home entirely by the machine in one day. The reason that people are interested in automating construction is that it really brings a lot of benefits. For example, construction is pretty labor intensive, and although it provides job for a sector of the society, it also has issues and complications. For example, construction is the most dangerous job that there is. It is worse than mining and agriculture. It has got the highest level of fatality almost in every country. Another issue is the waste. An average home in the United States has 3 to 7 tons of waste. So this is huge if we look at the impact of construction and knowing that about 40% of all materials in the world are used in construction. So big waste of energy and resources and big damage to the environment as well.
Making homes using hammers and nails and wood with the state of our technology today is really absurd and will go the way of our labor class in regards to manufacturing in the United States. Recently, there was a study by economist David Autor of MIT that states that our middle class is obsolete and being replaced by automation.
Quite simply, mechanization is more productive, efficient, and sustainable than human labor in virtually every sector of the economy today. Machines do not need vacations, breaks, insurance, pensions, and they can work 24 hours a day every day. The output potential and accuracy compared to human labor is unmatched. The bottom line, repetitive human labor is becoming obsolete and impractical across the world, and the unemployment you see around you today is fundamentally the result of this evolution of efficiency in technology. For years, market economists have dismissed this growing pattern, which could be called technological unemployment, because of the fact that new sectors always seem to emerge to reabsorb the displaced workers. Today, the service sector is the only real hub left and currently employs over 80% of the American workforce, with most industrialized countries maintaining a similar proportion. However, this sector is now being challenged increasingly by automated kiosks, automated restaurants, and even automated stores. Economists today are finally acknowledging what they have been denying for years. Not only is technological unemployment exacerbating the current labor crisis we see across the world due to the global economic downturn, but the more the recession deepens, the faster the industries are mechanizing. The catch, which is not realized, is that the faster they mechanize to save money, the more they displace people, the more they reduce public purchasing power. This means that while the corporation can produce everything more cheaply, fewer and fewer people will actually have money to buy anything, regardless of how cheap they become. The bottom line is that the labor for income game is slowly coming to an end. In fact, if you take a moment to reflect on the jobs which are in existence today, which automation could take over right now if applied, 75% of the global workforce could be replaced by mechanization tomorrow. And this is why, in a resource-based economy, there is no monetary market system, no money at all, for there is no need. A resource-based economy recognizes the efficiency of mechanization and accepts it for what it offers. It doesn't fight it like we do today. Why? Because it is irresponsible not to, given any interest in efficiency and sustainability. And this brings us back to our city system. In the center is the central dome, which not only houses the educational facilities and transportation hub, it also hosts the mainframe that runs the city's technical operations. The city is, in fact, one big automated machine. It has sensors in all technical belts to track the progress of agriculture, energy gathering, production, distribution, and the like. Now, would people be needed to oversee these operations in the event of a malfunction or the like? Most probably yes, but that number would decrease over time as improvements continue. However, as of today, maybe 3% of the city population would be needed for this job when you break it down. And I can assure you, that in an economic system which is actually designed to take care of you and secure your well-being, without you having to submit to a private dictatorship on a daily basis, usually to a job that is either technically unnecessary or socially pointless, while often struggling with debt that doesn't exist just to make ends meet. I guarantee you people will volunteer their time left and right to maintain and improve a system that actually takes care of them. And coupled with this issue of incentive comes the common assumption that if there isn't some external pressure for one to work for a living, people will just sit around, do nothing, and turn into fat, lazy blobs. This is nonsense. The labor system we have today is in fact the generator of laziness, not a resolver of it. If you think back to when you were a child, full of life, interested in new things to understand, likely creating and exploring, but as time went on, the system pushed you into the focus of figuring out how to make money. And from early education to study at a university, you are narrowed, only to emerge as a creature which serves as a cog in a wheel in a model that sends all the fruits to the upper 1%. Scientific studies have now shown that people are, in fact, not motivated by monetary reward when it comes to ingenuity and creation. The creation itself is the reward. Money, in fact, appears only to serve as an incentive for repetitive, mundane actions, a role we have just now shown can be replaced by machine. So when it comes to innovation, the actual use of the human mind, the monetary incentive has proven to be a hindrance, interfering and detracting from creative thought. And this might explain why Nikola Tesla, the Wright brothers, and other inventors who contributed massively to our current world never showed a monetary incentive to do so. Money is, in fact, a false incentive and causes 100 times more distortion than it does contribution.
Good morning, class. Please settle down. The first thing I would like to do is go around the room and ask what everyone would like to be when they grow up. Who'd like to go first? Okay, how about you, Sarah?
When I grow up, I want to work at McDonald's like my mom.
Oh, family tradition, eh? How about you, Linda?
When I grow up, I'm going to be a prostitute on the streets of New York City.
Oh, glamour girl, huh? Very ambitious. How about you, Tommy?
When I grow up, I'm going to be a rich, elitist businessman who works on Wall Street and profits off of the collapse of foreign economies.
Enterprising, and great to see some multicultural interest.
As stated before, a resource-based economy applies the scientific method to social concern, and this isn't limited to simply technical efficiency. It also has the consideration of human and social well-being directly and what comprises it. What good is a social system if, in the end, it doesn't produce happiness and peaceful coexistence? So it is important to point out that with the removal of the money system and the necessities of life provided, we would see a global reduction in crime by about 95% almost immediately, for there is nothing to steal, embezzle, scam, or the like. 95% of all people in prisons today are there due to some monetary-related crime or drug abuse, and drug abuse is a disorder, not a crime. So what about the other 5%, the truly violent, often seeming to some as being violent for the sake of being violent? Are they just evil people?
The reason that I frankly think it's a waste of time to engage in moral value judgments about people's violence is because it doesn't advance by one iota our understanding of either the causes or the prevention of the violent behavior. People sometimes ask if I believe in forgiving criminals. My answer to that is, no, I don't believe in forgiveness any more than I believe in condemnation. It's only if we as a society can take the same attitude of treating violence as a problem in public health and preventive medicine rather than as a moral evil It's only when we make that change in our own attitudes and assumptions and values that we will actually succeed in reducing the level of violence rather than stimulating it, which is what we do now.
The more justice you seek, the more hurt you become, because there's no such thing as justice. There is whatever there is out there. That's it. In other words, if people are conditioned to be racist and bigots, if they're brought up in an environment that advocates that, why do you blame the person for it? They're a victim of a subculture. Therefore, they have to be helped. The point is, we have to redesign the environment that produces aberrant behavior. That's the problem, not putting a person in jail. That's why judges, lawyers, freedom of choice, such concepts are dangerous, because it gives you misinformation that the person is bad or that person is a serial killer. Serial killers are made, just like soldiers become serial killers with a machine gun. They become killing machines, but nobody looks at them as murderers or assassins, because that's natural. So we blame people. We say, well, this guy was a Nazi, he tortured Jews. No, he was brought up to torture Jews. Once you accept the fact that people have individual choices and they're free to make those choices, free to make choices means without being influenced. And I can't understand that at all. All of us are influenced in all our choices by the culture we live in, by our parents, and by the values that dominate. So we're influenced. So there can't be free choices. What's the greatest country in the world? The true answer, I haven't been all over the world, and I don't know enough about different cultures to answer that question. I don't know anybody that speaks that way. They say, it's good old USA, the greatest country in the world. There's no survey. Have you been to India? No. Have you been to England? No. Have you been to France? No. What do you make your assumptions on? They can't answer. They get mad at you. They say, well, goddamn it, who the hell are you to tell me what to think? You know, don't forget, you're dealing with aberrated people. They're not responsible for their answers. They're victims of culture. That means they've been influenced by their culture.
We are now at a time when decisions must be made if we wish to evolve from our present culture of scarcity, waste, and environmental destruction to a sustainable society of ecological concern and abundance. A nation without a vision of what the future can be is bound to repeat past errors over and over again.
If we say dishonestly that man is the highest form of evolution, which you get in the school, man destroys the oceans, the fish, the atmosphere, one another, and man flies over a city, presses a button, and burns everybody in the city with nuclear weapons. Is he the highest creation of nature? Not yet, in my opinion. We've got a long way to go. We could either develop paradise on earth or oblivion, wipe ourselves out. Only the future will tell. It's what you do to make the future.
We can create a world where war and want are distant memories. When all of science and technology are used within a global resource-based economy for the protection of the environment and the well-being of all, only then will we understand what it means to be truly civilized. Be a part of the growing community of people working toward making the aims of the Venus Project a reality. Join us in our efforts to bring this vision of a positive future to a wider audience through the goal of a major motion picture.
All of these things can be built with what we know today. It would take 10 years to change the surface of the earth, to rebuild the world into a second Garden of Eden. The choice lies with you. The stupidity of a nuclear arms race, the development of weapons, trying to solve your problems politically by electing this political party or that political party, that all politics is immersed in corruption. Let me say it again. Communism, socialism, fascism, the Democrats, the liberals. There are no Negro problems or Polish problems or Jewish problems or Greek problems or women's problems. They're human